In 2009, Rome was the scene for the climax of an epic showdown. It wasn't just Manchester United versus Barcelona in the final. It was a clash between two managers who were so similar and yet very wide apart. The dominant force versus the emerging powerhouse. But even before all of that, the controversies too. And so, on that night in Rome, European football's ultimate prize was at stake, alongside the first battle between two players who would go on to dominate continental football for decades. But that's getting ahead of the story now, because for both teams, the road to the final was just as tough. Barcelona came into the 2008-09 season in transition mode. Just 3 years ago, they were champions of Europe, and things couldn't have been better. They had players like Deco, Samuel Eto'o, Carlos Puyol, Xavi, goalkeeper Victor Valdez, and the Maverick himself, Ronaldinho. But in the space of 3 years, the walls crumbled in Catalonia. They watched rivals Real Madrid win the league back-to-back, won no trophies in that spell, and like that, manager Frank Rijkaard was gone. His replacement? A former player turned manager in the Barcelona B team, Pep Guardiola. And straight from the off, he made major changes at the club, letting players like Ronaldinho and Deco leave, and building the club around a system of players from La Masia, particularly a 22-year-old kid on the verge of greatness. On the flip side in Manchester, it was a case of building on an existing legacy. Man United, coming into 2008-09, they were the team to beat, not just in English football, but in Europe too.
They've left Chelsea in second place yet again.
They'd won the Champions League a season before, added that to back-to-back Premier League titles, and Fergie's team was flying. It's easy to see why too, because at the time, they had some of the best players in the game wearing the club's iconic colours. Players like Edwin van der Sar, Rio Ferdinand, Paul Scholes, Nemanja Vidic, Wayne Rooney, Patrice Evra, and reigning Ballon d'Or holder at the time.
I think that's been important. Ronaldo in reserve.
Cristiano Ronaldo, fresh off a record-breaking season in the Premier League, the top scorer in the Champions League the season before, United and Sir Alex Ferguson had every reason to be confident they could become the first team in the new Champions League format to successfully defend their Champions League trophy, especially after the group stages drawn. Man United's path was straight. Villarreal, Ulubor BK, and Celtic. Just looking at this alone, United was the name everyone expected to qualify. But if there is one constant with Champions League football over the years, it's that these games are never straightforward. Just a quick one before we get into that, hit the subscribe button to Futbol Historia if you haven't yet for more content like this. After a 0-0 draw against Villarreal on the opening match day, United secured back-to-back 3-0 wins against Ulubor and Celtic respectively, and at that point they looked to have gotten their Champions League campaign back on track, until they stalled. Those two wins were the only successes they managed in the group. The next 3 games were draws against all 3 opponents in the league, and despite the shaky results, it was still enough for United to not just qualify, but secure the top spot in the group. The defending champions were in the knockouts. Barcelona, similar to Man United, had a relatively easy group stage seeding as well, despite having to go through the qualifying playoff just to get into the competition. Sporting CP, Shakhtar Donetsk and FC Basel. They were the odds-on favourites to qualify, and they did so without any serious complications. 4 wins, a draw and a defeat out of the 6 group stage games. But even this didn't tell the full story, because in that 6-game campaign, Barcelona was ruthless. They scored 18 goals in the group stage that campaign, and while players like Samuel Eto'o and Thierry Henry got their fair share in the front line, the real talking point was the rise of that 20-year-old Argentine genius. Messi was on a tear in the group stage. He'd scored 5 goals and added 3 assists in the 5 group stage games he'd played in the competition, and had now become the standout player of the group stage. Which was a big statement too, particularly because over in Manchester, the man everyone expected to grab the headlines was struggling. Ronaldo hadn't quite hit the same heights he had done in the previous campaign in the competition. He went blank in the group stage in terms of goals, 5 games and just 2 assists to his name. But beyond these 2, there was more, because the group stages had given an indicator of what was coming, and this battle was already shaping up nicely. Barcelona as a team was taking over Europe, and it wasn't just the Champions League either. In La Liga, after that opening day defeat against Numancia in August, they didn't lose a league game again until February. As crazy as this sounds, it gets better. In that same run, they were on a 9-game winning streak, drew against Getafe, and then went on a 10-game winning streak as well. What Pep Guardiola was doing with that team was unheard of and scary. From unorthodox tactics with players like Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets controlling the midfield and dominating teams, a front 3 of Messi, Eto'o and Henry with the ability to easily interchange, a fullback like Dani Alves who, at that time, was one of the pioneers of the modern-day fullback, the ability to get on the ball and producing goal actions, the team's general control of games. Barcelona didn't just win, they played football that was a mix of a certain style from the 90s.
From now on, we are going to play in that way. Going to take the ball, the positional game, and we were successful in that time. And now the people are convinced in that.
Alongside Pep's ideas of how he wanted the team to operate, all of that together had formed that Barcelona team that gave European teams nightmares trying to find ways past them. United may have stuttered in Europe, but it took nothing away from the fact that they were still right up there with the best teams on the continent. To be honest, the 2008-9 Manchester United was Sir Alex Ferguson implementing the same principles from 2006-7 and 2007-8, with a few tweaks and different players involved this time. Ball-playing centre-backs in Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic, a solid goalkeeper at the base in Edwin van der Sar, and in that 4-4-2 or 4-3-3 hybrid system, with Michael Carrick and Paul Scholes at the base, which could sometimes be Darren Fletcher and Anderson at times. It allowed a dynamic front 3 of Ronaldo, Rooney or Tevez, and a new acquisition that was proving to be a very important part of that United team: Dimitar Berbatov. There was no doubt that despite the shaky results in Europe, this United team could play sensational football. And so on the path to Rome for both teams, with the group stages done, the knockout paths for the 2 were very similar outcomes for both teams. No more easy games from this point on. Barcelona, they were drawn against a tricky Olympique Lyon team that was capable of springing an upset, and in the first leg, it almost happened. Janino with a trademark free kick to give Lyon the lead before Thierry Henry equalised for Barca, and the game finished in a 1-1 draw. The positive for Pep Guardiola and his team was, with the away goals rule still being a thing in the competition back then, they had a slender advantage heading into the second leg at the Nou Camp. But it didn't matter, because over in Spain, it was a rout. Barcelona hit 5 against Lyon thanks to a brace from Henry, alongside goals from Messi, Eto'o and Seydou Keita. 5! The game finished 6-2 on aggregate, and like that, Barcelona was into the last 8, the quarter-finals. And if we switch the focus to Manchester, the paths almost mirrored each other too. Man United's draw in the round of 16, Inter Milan against a Jose Mourinho-led team that knew how to get results against United. And in the first leg at the Giuseppe Meazza, it was tight. 0-0, meaning all to play for in the second leg, and the away goals rule factored in too. If Inter scored at Old Trafford, United would have to score 2 or more to qualify. But Fergie's team was hell-bent on making sure this didn't happen, and for added measure, they scored 2. The only difference is they kept a clean sheet in the process. Job done, into the quarter-finals, and as a plus, United star man Ronaldo has finally bagged his first goal of the competition. The road to Rome had become a lot clearer now, but at the same time, the competition got even tougher. Manchester United versus Porto in the quarter-finals, and in the first leg at Old Trafford, after going a goal down early, goals from Wayne Rooney and Carlos Tevez seemed like they'd be enough to get the job done and give United the win in the first leg, but they somehow conceded a late equaliser to make it 2-2 going back to Porto. This was never going to be an easy job, particularly when you realise a 0-0 or 1-1 result would be enough to send Porto into the semis. But in a tight game at the Estadio Dragão, the difference was a goal so good it became the start of a tradition. Ronaldo's long-range banger against Porto would later go on to win the first ever Puskas Award as the best goal of the year. But that's getting ahead of the timeline because at that moment it was enough to get the job done. Say what you want, but United was in the last four of the Champions League for the third year in a row. If Porto was tough for Man United, Barcelona had it worse. Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals. On paper, it was a type of game to get you off the edge of your seat, a difficult one against two really strong teams. But in the first leg at the Nou Camp, Barcelona once again came to the party and put out a statement result. A Messi brace, the other two in the front three, Eto'o and Henry, also got in on the action and gave Barcelona a 4-0 lead. You think this was good? It's even better when you realise Barcelona scored all 4 goals in the first half. They needed 43 minutes to decide the game, that easy. In the second leg in Germany, the game finished 1-1 after Seydou Keita cancelled Ribéry's opener, 5-2 on aggregate, and Barcelona was in the last 4. But now guys, we're at a crucial moment in this story, because what happens from here on out, particularly in the semi-finals, was almost bigger than the final. The last 4? Barcelona, Chelsea, Man United and Arsenal. A period of English dominance with 3 teams out of the 4. And with Barcelona facing Chelsea in the semis, United got Arsenal in the other semi-final. But the attention was fully fixed on that game between Barcelona and Chelsea, a game that would go down as the most controversial fixture in Champions League history. The first leg finished 0-0 at the Nou Camp, and with Barcelona having thumped Lyon and Bayern on the same ground, drawing that game to Chelsea had a few fans worried. It was all to play for in the second leg, and that's the game that ended up becoming a ticking time bomb even UEFA couldn't handle. To say this one was controversial would be an understatement.
It's never been scored at Stamford Bridge. Michael Essien's got it. It is massive. It is massive.
Chelsea took the lead early thanks to Michael Essien, but from that point up, they could have easily been 3 or 4 goals ahead. But for one man, the one man who is still keeping Barcelona in the competition, not Victor Valdez, not any of Barcelona's back 4, midfield 3, or even the attack, not Pep Guardiola, him.
So if you do a big mistake in a very important game, your career could be finished. But if you do a big mistake as a player or as a coach in an important game, you could still continue.
Tom Henning Overbo, the referee in that second leg, with some of the most disgusting decisions the game has seen in years. Starter fact, he gave more. It's crazy to think while all of this was going on, the game was still being played at a high tempo. Barcelona got reduced to 10 men after Overbo sent off Eric Abidal, but Chelsea continued creating chances. The game was ticking into the final minutes of the 90, and with everything that had happened so far, it was almost certain that this one would have one final twist.
But it's Messi, it's Iniesta! And the Chelsea fans cover their eyes in horror.
Andres Iniesta scored a clutch goal to level the game for Barcelona, but that was the undercard because the big story was that at that moment, Barcelona had just gotten the crucial away goal that would see them qualify, and Chelsea had to score. The game wasn't done. The Blues created one last chance, and if you guessed it, Overbo was at it again. Ballack couldn't believe it, and to be honest, neither could the rest of the world. Full time, and for the first time in 3 years, Barcelona was in the final of the Champions League. It wasn't the free-flowing football they'd played until the semis that got the job done. It was, in Didier Drogba's words,
A referee from Norway is the strongest official you can put down. This is supposed to be
a disgrace. But still, Barcelona and Pep didn't care because even though guys like Gerard Piqué knew the decisions had gone their way,
Ball touched my hand, but I didn't want to touch it, no, but the ref can decide wherever he wants. He decided not to say it was a pen, and that's it, no, you have to.
Barcelona was going to Rome, and so at that point, it became a question of which team was going to join them. United versus Arsenal in the semis, and the first leg at Old Trafford was pure United dominance. But in the end, they had just one goal from John O'Shea to show for it. In the second leg though, United had learned from the mistakes of the first. In the Champions League, taking the chances as they come is very important. They knew this, and so the game at the Emirates was football under Sir Alex Ferguson at its finest.
Rooney's got some space to his left. Here is Wayne Rooney. Ronaldo's getting up with him. Rooney has found Ronaldo. How about that? How about that?
Goals from Ronaldo and Rooney, alongside a Ji-sung Park goal, sealed a 3-1 win for United, 4-1 on aggregate, and Man United was in the final of the Champions League for the second year running. And finally, the road to Rome was complete. The 2009 Champions League final path was crystal clear now. Pep Guardiola's emerging Barcelona team versus Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United force. And ahead of the final, it was clear both managers knew they would have to tweak things to stand a chance. From Sir Alex Ferguson talking about tactical ideas here, to seeing the Barcelona lineup ahead of the final and seeing Yaya Touré playing at centre-back and Carlos Puyol at right-back, the minor differences were going to make this one major. And as soon as a ref hit the whistle at the Stadio Olimpico, it was showtime. Within the opening minutes of the game, Manchester United started the better team. Ronaldo's free kick was saved before Piqué cleared the follow-up, and minutes later he was having a crack from miles out before a third effort again that went just wide. At that point, it was clear they were going to play the United way, on the offensive from the get-go. They'd created all these chances in the opening 8 minutes, and the feeling was that if they continued in that fashion, they would be able to break this Barcelona team. Except, Barcelona had plans of their own. See guys, Pep Guardiola is a very clever man.
And that's what's happened is Guardiola killed us. Because the first 10 minutes, you see the way we were like pushing. Then what he did, he put Messi and he put Samuel Eto'o on my side. I never see Eto'o defend against me like that.
Pushing Messi into a central position and playing Eto'o out wide was a stroke of genius many didn't understand, especially after United started creating these early chances. But less than a minute after Ronaldo's third attempt at goal, the sucker punch. Eto'o cutting in from the right and getting his effort past Van der Sar. 1-0 Barcelona. You could see the goal had rattled Manchester United. It was against the run of play really, but still they continued going at Barcelona's goal. At that point, it was almost becoming the Cristiano Ronaldo versus Barcelona show, like he was on a mission to prove a point because he'd made more efforts at goal. But then, the game started to open up. As the minutes passed, the pattern was clear. Barcelona played a line so high that they forced United back into their half, and the only way Fergie's team could get up the pitch was with long balls and counters into Ronaldo over the top. That midfield trio Barcelona had, plus the unpredictable movement of the front three, was working, even though the United players didn't know it yet. Chasing the ball as they did was tiring, gently yet steadily zapping the energy out of them. And by half-time, even though the game was still 1-0, United looked like they'd been shell-shocked in a war. Into the second half now, and Sir Alex Ferguson knew something had to change, so he brought on Carlos Tevez for Anderson, hoping to give United the edge, and that created spark in attack. For Barcelona, Pep's message must have been more of the same. Control the game. Barcelona knew they had the edge. Each of them already understood the game. They knew United would come out wanting to attack, because that was a United way. And so it became a case of playing against this, and Barcelona started the second half better. Henry forced Van der Sar into a neat save 2 minutes after the restart. Messi came close to getting on the end of an Eto'o square ball into the box, and Xavi came closer than anyone else. Hit the bar! United continued to try, but at this point they were creating half chances. Still, with the score at only 1-0, United felt they were still in the game. But that was the thing about Pep's Barcelona that year. They could give you hope, only to take it from you minutes later. And that's exactly what they did. A goal as iconic as the man himself. Xavi's cross, Messi's header, holding his boot in his hand. Van der Sar's frozen face watching the ball loop in. The United players looking deflated. If 1-0 was hard against that Barcelona team, 2-0 was the football version of Mission Impossible. From that moment on, it was all Barcelona. Ronaldo got booked. Scholes' horror tackle on Busquets. They were chasing shadows, as they had been for a large part of the game. It continued like that into the final seconds, and at full time, it was done. Barcelona were the new kings of Europe. It wasn't just winning, but it was the way they won. Credit to Sir Alex Ferguson, he knew he'd been beaten by a proper team and admitted it. The same with Pep too, he had words of praise for Manchester United.
They tried to keep the ball with BDG Ferdinand, and with Carrick always is a very good player. And they tried they tried to keep the ball and try also the contact with Ronaldo with Rooney.
But for him and his Barcelona team, the only thought now was to enjoy the treble.
To get the treble in the first time is marvelous.
What an achievement. They would go on to win 6 trophies in that magical year of 2009, but this one was far from done because just 2 years later in 2011, they would meet again. And if you thought this final was smooth, the one from 2011 was pure football at its peak. Click the next video to find out why the 2011 Champions League final will never be forgotten.